You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Nick today. Nick is an individual who's been a listener of the show for a few years now and reached out to me about some experiences that he's had in Montana and going to share some other things too that he's heard along the way. So welcome to the show, Nick. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing great. It's always a good time when I'm able to spend some time chatting about what people have experienced and listen to that. So I'm having a great day out here in Iowa. But Nick, feel free to take us back to the first thing you experienced and what you were up to that day when this started happening for you.
Yeah, I'm from Everett, Washington. That's where I grew up, Seattle area. I got family out in Montana, outside of Helena. And so I'd been going there since I was a kid. Been following Bigfoot research for years and years, listening to podcasts. Just something about it intrigued me a lot. And so one of the things, so I have a girlfriend, and one of the things she encountered when she was about 7 years old is she was at her parents' house and she looked out her window, and in the backyard, this is out in Lake Stevens. I've heard other experiences from out there. But when she looked down, she'd seen a very tall figure under the spotlight a little bit back by the garage. And back then, this was trees, lots of streams and swamp area. And she didn't know what she saw, but it scared her. So that's one little detail there. I also have a buddy, and these are just a few experiences that I'm running off before I get into the Montana trip. But so I got a buddy that has some property out in Cle Elum as well. That's on the east side of the Cascades there. And I visited his place out there, and it's pretty cool out in the middle of nowhere near BLM land. And when he was in he's got a little, I don't know, kind of like a little shed, a little bunkhouse. And he told me that him and his wife were there, just them on the property. And he woke up in the middle of the night. And so the little sleeping loft is about 10, 12 feet off the ground. And when he woke up, he's seen these bright lights shining in through the window. And he just woke up and he didn't know what was going on. And he ran down to go look outside, and it was gone by the time he looked out. But that's just an experience that he told me about that I thought was pretty interesting. Who knows what it could have been. And then so back in, I used to have a girlfriend, an ex, back in Clearview area. It's kind of east of the I-5 corridor, kind of out by Highway 9. And she had a property out there that was on a few acres out in the woods. There was houses around, a lot of farmland, stuff like that. And I'd go there and pick her up and we'd hang out. And I know one night we were sitting there in the car, and there's no lights anywhere. It's just dark and fields and woods. And we ended up hearing some whistles out back of the property. When I was listening to podcasts all the time, and I'd joke around with her, "Oh, that was probably Bigfoot," but you never know. And at that same property, so I used to go park outside and wait for her to come out, and she'd just take forever to get ready and come out. And then I'm sitting there and I'm looking across this field, and I see right along the tree line, I see this thing that looks like an orb. It's just this kind of soft light, and it's just dipping and flowing through the trees. And I sat there for probably 20, 25 minutes watching this thing just move around in the woods. There's nothing over there. I don't know what, someone's walking around at night in the woods right there. Or it wasn't like a flashlight either. It wasn't like a spotlight or a flashlight. It was just this light that was just moving, a soft glow moving through the trees. I just thought it was really weird. I listen to these Bigfoot podcasts, and I've just listened to everything, and just that's the first thing that pops in my head is, who knows what that is, right? But definitely Bigfoot was one thing that popped in my head. You always hear about those orbs being related to Bigfoot sightings. I don't know what it was, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting to tell you. Also, so I kind of had a rough life growing up, got in a lot of trouble when I was younger, and ended up landing me in prison around like the age of 34. And while I was in prison, I ran into a guy in there and we were talking, and he was actually in there for poaching. He poached a bear and he got in trouble for it and he got locked up. And so we were talking about hunting and fishing and stuff. And I was like, "You ever seen anything out there weird?" And he said, "It's funny you ask." So he said that when he was fishing, that he was fishing in a creek and there was kind of like maybe 10-foot walls around this creek, and that he had seen something that was about 10 feet tall, hairy, and it was in the daylight. And he said it was a Bigfoot. I thought that was pretty cool. Daytime sighting. Yeah.
Wow. Was he able to give any details about what area that was at?
I don't know what area it was.
Okay.
This was 5 years ago when I was in prison. I've turned my life around and I'm doing good things now. But so it's not something I really thought I was going to need to remember, but I do remember him telling me about it, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And congrats on turning your life around as well, which is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy in life now. I'm a contractor. I run my own business. Just did a 180 and I haven't looked back. So if you want me to, I can start talking about my Montana trips. So I got family out in Montana. We got a few hundred acres outside of Helena, like just on the south side of Helena there. And so it's you get off the freeway and you got to drive for about 20 minutes up into the hills and the mountains, and it's all private property back in there. Going up the road, it's out in the middle of nowhere. I just love going out there. I take about a month off during the winter time around Thanksgiving to go out there, and I take about a month off during summer to travel out there. And so we got one house. It's kind of like you go down a road and then you hang left and it goes up a kind of a steep road into my family's property. And at the top, when it levels out, I got my uncle's house up there, and then they got a little cabin right next to the house too. And then going up the road from the bottom, if you hang right, I got my cousin Aaron's house, and it's on the hill. And then I got my other cousin's house. They got another house kind of a little farther back in there. So it's kind of like a little family compound on this acreage. So on this property, they got silver mines and just all over the property. And we go rock hounding, and I've found a lot of silver. So this property is very interesting. There's a lot of, holes and just weird land. And there's got these silver mines, these big holes going into the ground that are pretty sketchy. A lot of times they use them for burn pits. And around this area, we got some of the like Elkhorn Mountains. You got just mountains everywhere around there. A lot of BLM land. So right behind our family's property is nothing but BLM land. All right, there's just nothing out there. You can go on a 4-wheeler for miles and miles, and it's just empty. There's trails and hunting and stuff, but yeah, it's just so. One thing about Bigfoot is I think that they migrate. I don't think they stay here in this area all year. And if you look on a map, you can see where they would travel. And I think what they do is they may go down south for the winter and then they travel back up into Canada during the winter. So I think when I went out there so not this past summer, but the summer before is when I had these experiences. And I think I probably just was there at the right time when they were coming through. It was only this one time when I went out there that I had experiences, and it was pretty eventful. So one thing about this trip was we were getting ready to go there, and my girlfriend, she had a dream about a bear attack, like charging her. It was really weird that she would just have this dream about this. She knew we were going on this trip, but sometimes I think dreams have merit or there might be something to it. But so she had this dream about this bear charging up on her, and she just fell to the ground in her dream, and the bear like went up in her face, and then she woke up, right? And she told me about it. And I'm always being a city boy, but still traveling out to Montana as a kid a lot. In between, I like to go camping and hunting and stuff, but I'm always worried about wildlife or bears, or it's just something to be cautioned about. I'm not trying to be some animal's food. So we're going out to this trip, and I'm gonna be. She had this dream, and then on our way out there, while we were driving, my cousin calls me and he says, "Oh, we just seen a bear on the property." And I'm like, "What?" She just had this dream, and now my cousin telling me there's a bear on the property. And heading over there, I'm just like, got my head on a swivel because we want to go hiking around and go four wheeling, go explore and stuff. And now I got to worry about a bear. And so that just, and I'd traveled out there after I got out of prison. I would go out there a couple times during the summer. I was single by myself. And so I went out there a lot, and I wasn't too worried about it. But then because she had this dream, and then my cousin called me and told me there was a bear on the property, like I was really on guard being there. I had my little dog with me, and I don't want it to get eaten by something. And he's just a little 10-pound little Chihuahua Shih Tzu. And so the whole time, really on point, keeping an eye out for anything. And then so we got there to Montana, and it's beautiful out. It's in between going from the wet season to the dry season. It was like June around there. And so it was still pretty lush, but it was starting to dry out a little bit by the end of our trip. We were there for about a month. So on this property, we got kind of in between where the houses are and BLM. It goes up and down and into ravines and back up. And there's these granite rocks are everywhere, just huge rocks the size of houses. And there's this one like rock wall that goes on for, I don't know, hundreds of yards. And we got this little spot that we call Pride Rock that kind of overlooks a big meadow that stretches around the property, and the elk to go up in there and graze and stuff. And so during hunting season, we always go up to Pride Rock, and we'll look down and scope around, see if we can see any elk or whatnot. It's just a spot we go to hang out, get some fresh air. And so I was already on point because of this bear. So I grabbed my cousin's gun. I had that in the by, and just a little protection. It was just a little 45 pistol, but just something. And so I got my little dog, and I got my girlfriend cat, and we walk out. You got to like park, and then you got to walk through some trees to get to the rock, the Pride Rock, where the other rocks are. And we go out there and we look around, just taking in the view. I'm showing her the place. And on our way back, I'm ahead of her on the way back, and my little dog is following her. And then she goes, "Oh," and there's these rocks that we're kind of walking through to get back. And she's, "Oh, look at this cave over here. I want to go look at that cave." And I'm like, "No, we're not looking at a cave. You just had a dream about a bear attacking you, and there's supposedly a bear on the property. You're not going to go look at a cave." So and I'm like, "Let's get out of here." So I start walking back towards the side by, and I'm like maybe 40 feet in front of them. And all of a sudden we hear a growl. It was kind of like it wasn't so much like an angry growl. It was more of the sound a bear would make if they're gruffing, just moseying around. But it was loud. And immediately my girlfriend comes booking it towards the side by, and my little dog was on a log, and she was like ears perked up, and she's looking over by where the rocks were. And I just instinctively ran over and back towards where this growl came from. And I snatched her up by the back of the neck, and I come running back to the side by, and we hop in it and take off. And at the time I'm thinking bear. That's what I thought it was. And that's what it could have been, the bear, for all I know. As the story goes, you'll see could have been bear, it might have been something else. So we would go for hikes on the property, and there's, like I said, there's silver mines everywhere. I wanted to look around, see if I could see what I could see, get my chance out in the woods, see if I can see anything that looks weird. And so we're going for hikes on this property just to hang out and go for a little hike. And so we'd cross on our property, we'd cross over onto this kind of part of the property that's really hilly. And all along these hills are these big gouges in the earth where they had like old maybe test spots for mining. And so we're walking through, and there's deadfall everywhere, these big, huge piles of deadfall. And you got to step over logs, and it's really thick. And so we're looking around, hey, let's look for footprints. And we're looking around, and we do see some things that look like big prints. One of them looked like a smaller footprint, but it definitely looked like a footprint. I don't know. It's dusty, so nothing, not like in the mud or nothing, but there's just a lot of prints around. I just thought that was interesting. So while we're walking through here, I came across this little wooded area that had some saplings that were kind of like in a circle, maybe 5 feet around. And inside this little circle of trees that were maybe 3 feet tall, I found an empty bag of chicken feed that was just out in the middle of the woods here on my family's property. It was empty. It didn't look torn into. It was in these little saplings area. There's no way it got blown into there. Like, it was totally enclosed. Like, it looked like a little hidey spot. There's no way it blew in there. I don't know how it got there. It wasn't ripped open like predators had gotten to it. I went and asked my aunt later on. I asked her, I was like, have you lost any bags of chicken? Because she does have chickens. But this is a ways away from the house. I don't know how I got there. I just thought it was weird. And she said, no, I haven't been missing any bags of chicken feed. So I'm not sure whose it was or how it got there. But I just thought that was pretty weird. And then so we're walking through, and we went on for many walks through here. So this isn't just one walk. This is like multiple times we're going out, and we go a little farther and farther. And one time we were walking out there, and my little dog, she loves going for walks. You let her go, she'll just go and go. We have to eventually be like, all right, let's go back. And she's very reluctant. One time we were walking through, and we were coming up on one of the silver mines. And my dog just planted down, sat down, and she would not move. She did not want to keep following us. And we want to go explore the mine, just the entrance. I'm not trying to go inside it. But she would not follow us. And I just thought it was so weird. I kept trying to call her, and she wasn't having it. And then she started walking back towards the house. And it's not like her to do that. She loves to explore. And I just thought it was really weird that she wouldn't follow us, didn't want nothing to do with it. She wanted to leave. So I don't know if she could smell something that we couldn't or what, but we took her follow and lead, and we went back home. You kind of got to listen to your animals sometimes, you know what I mean? And so on all these little kind of treks in the woods, we would hear like thumping on the ground. It wasn't something that was like audible as much as something you could barely hear, but it would sound. So there's deer and elk on the property. It could have been that, but just randomly we'd be walking through, and we'd stop, and we'd kind of listen, because I love researching Bigfoot and listening to podcasts. So I'm going to take my opportunity out there and do a little my own research if I can. And so we'd stop, and we'd listen, and we'd look, and I'd be hearing these like random thumps on, almost like something's jumping out of a tree and hitting the ground and running. And it was very odd, and it happened a lot. It happened the whole time we were there. I would be hearing this. And also when we'd be walking through, and from these silver mines, there'd be these huge mounds that were just huge piles of stuff removed from these mines, tailings, I guess you'd call them. And so they're all throughout the property, and on these hills, it's kind of like the tailings make these little bluffs that kind of go out, and then they're like straight down, and these huge mounds. I mean, like hundreds of feet tall, not maybe 100, like maybe 75 feet tall, pretty significant little hills. And so we'd be climbing up and over these, and we'd get back farther, and we'd be stopping and listening, and we get to the top of this one little hill that it wasn't a tailing hill, but we'd be climbing over those, and we got to the top of this hill, and on the top there was these rocks that were, I don't know, maybe they're about 100 pounds roughly. And it was really weird, because at the top of this hill, these rocks looked like they had been like moved, like ever so slightly. They weren't in place. They weren't like, you could see where the rock was, and then you could clearly see divot where the rock would be, and they were moved maybe like an inch or two. And I just thought it was really weird. They weren't flipped over or anything, but they were obviously moved. I don't know what, I mean, I don't know what would be going on top of that hill and moving these rocks on private property, but I thought that was very odd. And let's see. And also on our walks, my girlfriend did say one time she thought so I would always be getting ahead of her. I walk fast. I'm exploring. And she was maybe a couple 100 feet behind me. And she kept trying to get my attention because I was like walking too far ahead, and she was getting worried. And she said that she had seen something fluffy that looked like a tree, and she was trying to get my attention. And by the time she looked back after getting my attention, it was whatever, it was gone. I don't know if she said it was like poking out behind a tree, or she said it was fluffy and looked like a tree. Then after that, she got scared and she wanted to go back. And all in these little areas too, there's these divots on the hillside, these where they would test for these mines, they dig down, like these little, maybe 5 foot deep, maybe 15 foot around, these little kind of divots in the ground on the hillsides, just spanning this whole hill. And inside these little divots, there's deadfall everywhere. I don't know how this stuff got in, but it looked like little spots that would just hang out and lay down. It could be bedding areas, possibly. I don't know. It was just it looked really worn down, squished down, kind of just old branches and stuff in a couple of the spots. And something could just be crouched down in there or hiding, and you wouldn't even see them until you get right up in this thing. As it goes on, we're just seeing more interesting things. And one night we decided, so there's some ponds at the bottom by the road, the dirt road, the private road that comes in, then it goes up the hill into my family's property. And at the bottom, there's a stream, and then there's like a pond on one side of our private drive. And then it goes underneath the road, and then there's another pond, maybe 100 feet down in the woods there. And so we decided to go sit up on some of these rocks that were up the hill a little ways, like maybe a few 100 feet up the hill, and just sit there during dusk and listen and see what we could hear. And we were sitting there one night for about 45 minutes, and then it was starting to get darker and darker until it was still dusk. It wasn't dark, but you could see everything starting to blend together. It's gray colored. And we started hearing something down at the bottom of the road. It sounded like something, it's kind of like a dirt gully road. Like you can hear crunching sounds if you're walking on it. And we could hear something down at the bottom there by the ponds, by the road. It could have been an animal or whatever, but we started seeing something coming up the gravel road, and it was too dark to really tell what it was. It looked tall, but that could have been from the perspective of us looking down. It looked grayish colored. I'm not sure what it was, but we're sitting there listening and watching this thing, and we decided to take off. The thing's just moseying around there, and I'm just like, I don't feel like having a close encounter with nothing. So we went back home. And so the whole time we're staying for about a month there at my cousin's place in the property. So the spot that's closer to the ponds. And there is a house down on the main road there that's close to my cousin's house right there. Because the road comes up, and it's a private road. So occasionally there's like a house on the right or left. And I think there's one farther up. There's one last property way up the road, maybe about a mile up the road. And so my cousin's property, my uncle's property, it's one of the last few houses on this road. And so in the backyard there, I was staying in the basement. It's like a 3-story house. There's a big tailings pile off to the side of the house. The house is a 3-story, but the front of it is at the 2nd story, and it's on a hill. So the backyard kind of levels out for a little bit where there's grass and stuff. And I was staying in the basement there, and there's windows all along this basement, big slider door. So you can see the whole backyard from inside this place. So that's where I was staying. I had the whole basement to ourselves. And it was really weird because you could smell every once in a while, if you were standing out on the back porch, you get these random, what smells like sewer, just randomly. I know their property is on septic, but you don't usually, those are usually closed up. You're not going to really smell that from what I've seen. I've never, and I'd stayed there before for a few years, going there multiple times a year, and I'd never smelled any sewer smells from their septic systems or anything like that. But this year, it kept smelling. We'd both smell this. We get wafts of it, and it was just pungent. It did not smell good. I'm not sure what that was, but that was another thing we experienced. And let's see here. So we kind of just we're kind of looking around, just trying to see what we could see. And so what we'd do is at nighttime, we'd go in the backyard and we'd set up some chairs by the back door. And we'd just sit there and just enjoy the night and see what we could hear. And we'd just sit there quietly. And there's no car noises. It's just dead quiet out there. You can hear crickets and whatnot. But it's just so peaceful going from the city to this. Just sit up there at night and listen to see what we could hear. Open for an experience. So we were in the backyard, and every once in a while you'd hear movement, and you hear something scuffling around, some of the areas is really rocky and dirt from these tailings, so you could hear something going through that. But a lot of it's like pine needles from all the pine trees and the lodge poles. So it's pretty soft ground in a lot of the spots. But every once in a while you hear something scuffling around. We'd sit there and we'd start seeing like Eyeshine up on the tailings pile. I'm just sitting there just watching this Eyeshine. There is deer on the property. So at this point, it could be deer. I'm not seeing everything's Bigfoot. I'm just seeing what I could see. And we saw Eyeshine. My girlfriend, one night, she got tired of sitting out there with me. She said, I'm going inside. And so I was sitting out there, and I heard something large run across the property and go up into the tailing, like to the top of the tailings pile that's on the side of the house. And I told her, I'm like, get out here, there's something out here. I don't know what it was, but I could see Eyeshine. It was almost like a whitish Eyeshine. It was kind of like, it wasn't light. It wasn't red or anything weird, but it was just kind of like a white colored, kind of a really bright white. We saw one up on the side of the tailings pile, and then also to the other side of the house, I was seeing some Eyeshine that looked like it was kept peeking behind the tree and blinking. So another one of the nights, I would go out there. I'd have a big spotlight, and most of the time, I would just go sit out in the dark and not shine a light. If there is something out there, I want it to come in and check us out. We got light. It's a Bigfoot TV for them if they want. They can watch us. There's windows everywhere. It might be interesting for them. But so one night I decided to use a spotlight. We got a spotlight for whatever. I don't know if they use it for hunting or just on the property, and it's a big spotlight. So I'm spotlighting around, and I'm up on the back deck, up on the second story. So over where I usually sit, and I'm shining the spotlight down from above, and I shine to the left of the house, and there's kind of like a little tree line over there. Some trees that are 10 feet tall, some that are 40, 50 feet tall. It's kind of like a little group of trees along the side over there. And I'm shining the light on the left side of the house. And it was really weird because this light is so bright. You're going to light up whatever's over there. You're going to see a tree. So right in this little group of trees, it was so weird because I would shine the light over there, and it's, I don't know, maybe 75 feet away. And there was this one spot that was, it was like a shadow, right? It was really dark. It was black, like black as black could be. And I'm shining the light at it, and it's all trees. Everything is green, lit up, but this one spot that was like right behind one of the trees, it was like this shadow, and the light's pointed directly at these trees. I could see if someone was shining a light 20 feet to my right and they were pointing at the tree, that you'd see a shadow on the tree behind it. But I'm pointing this light directly at these trees. I shouldn't see any shadows. There's this looks like a figure. I don't know, maybe 9 feet tall, and it's a shadow. And no, I didn't see any eyes. I didn't. It just looked black. It didn't. It wasn't like I could see some of the hair or anything. It was just like pitch black, and it was a figure that was like standing behind one of the trees, and it was just like halfway out behind the tree, and there's another tree behind it, so you could see the color of each tree, but then there's this black kind of figure that's halfway out, and I'm standing there and I'm shining it. I'm not going to go look over there. I'm too much of a scaredy cat to be approaching anything at night in the woods in Montana. So I would just eventually I just turned it off and walked away. I said, okay, all right. So I just thought that was pretty creepy. Let's see. So so here's a part that happens where this was very significant, a little event that happened. So it was in the middle of the night. We just got back from going to the hot springs in Montana. They got these Broadwater hot springs in Helena, Montana. And so I think we got back there maybe midnight, 11, 12 o'clock, and had been drinking and we were arguing and we got in a little fight. And she's like, I'm going for a walk, and she's already dressed up, ready to go for a walk. And I'm like, whatever, just get out of here. And so she left, and it's the middle of the night. She didn't have a flashlight. I'm like, whatever, I'll just let her go. I don't want to fight with her anymore. And, after like maybe a minute, I was like, maybe I shouldn't let her go wander around in the middle of the night after we've had these kind of weird things happening. The bear stuff, I'm just a little concerned. I still care about her even if we're in a fight. So I get dressed, put on my boots, I grab the gun, I got these little flashlights. I got like a 4,000 lumen little ace beam flashlight, super bright. I'm like, okay, I got a gun, I got a light. I'm not worried about going out in the woods. And I'm still on guard. And so in between my cousin's house, so the main road comes up the hill, right? It goes up and it wraps around to the right, our main private drive. And then it kind of goes up and then wraps around back to the left and comes up to my uncle's property. In between my uncle's property and my cousin Aaron's, there's a little cut through that goes through the woods. And they're maybe a few hundred yards apart, I'd say. And so you can't see one house from the other. You can't see, if you're at any of the three houses, you can't see the other house. They're that far enough away where you're walking through these woods. There's a little road that you can drive your car down, or a four-wheeler, that kind of cuts through from his house to their house. And then, so it's kind of like forms a little triangle from the main road to where you turn off the main road to go to my cousin Aaron's, and then it cuts through to go back to that road that goes to my uncle's. And so I go out, and she likes the pond, and there's down by the pond, there's it's like an old piece of silver mining equipment, like like a smelter kind of thing that's up in this little rocky area down by the ponds. And it's just right off the road going down from the ponds. And so I come out of my cousin's place. Instead of going up to my uncle's, I take a left to go back down to the main private drive that goes down. And then you can take a left and go down to the bottom of the hill by the ponds, or you can take a right and go up to my uncle's house. And so I go down, and she don't got a flashlight, so I don't know where she's at. But I'm walking down. I take a left, and I'm like halfway down to the ponds, and I'm just like, I don't think she went down this way. I can almost see the bottom. And I'm like, I don't think she's down this way. So I turn around. Plus, I didn't feel like going down to the ponds at night. I just didn't feel right. It's too spooky. And so I turn around, I'm going back up, and I just go along the main drive up to my uncle's place, and I walk all the way up, and I get to the back of the kind of housing property area where they got like the chickens and the little cabin. And I don't see her back there. So I turn around, and I'm coming back, and I'm cutting through the little cut through to go down to my cousin's house. And there's some rocks with our name on the rocks, like a little piece of metal carved out. And I see her crouched down. I come up on her. She's crouched down with her knife out, and she's shaking like a leaf. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like something was following me. And so in the little area, this little triangle area that of woods that's in between the roads and stuff, she said something was back in there and it was following her while she was walking. She was going up to my uncle's house, and she said that there was something in there that was like following her in the bush and the trees, and she could hear it. And she got scared and she just went over by that rock, crouched down, and had her knife out, was waiting for see if this thing was going to try to get her. I found her. I'm like, all right, let's just get back home. Let's get back to my cousin's house. And so from where she was crouched down over to my cousin's is maybe 100 yards. So we're walking down through his road, and we get back and we get to where his house is, and we cut down to the right, and it goes down this little hill to the back of the yard. And I got the gun on me. I got it in my hand. And I'm in the backyard, and I'm like in the little grassy area. And so I'm standing there, and she said something was following her. So I stand there, and we'd already been sitting out there at night listening. So I just stand there, and she's back on the porch a little bit, the back downstairs porch. And I'm standing there listening. And all of a sudden I hear two knocks that's like on our property, not very far away, like within a stone's throw, maybe a couple 100 feet away, not very far. We hear two knocks, and it sounded like it wasn't like a deep knock sound. It sounded like if you ever hear those like musical instruments where they hit two pieces of clean wood together.
Yep.
It's very sharp noise. It wasn't, and there ain't nobody. My cousin's got kids. They're in bed. It's in the middle of the night. There's not anything. There's nobody would this property here. It just. So I hear these two knocks, and I'm like, what the? Of course I know what a knock, Bigfoot knocks. Of course I know. You know what I mean? And I hear this, and so I'm like, no way. Get out of here. Is this really happening? And so I'm like, okay. So I go down and I sit down in the chair to listen more. And so I'm sitting there listening, and maybe 30 yards away from me, not even, maybe 20 yards away, I hear something that sounds like something walking on 2 feet, walking across. There's some gravel over by there's a little swing set kind of thing that's strung up between the trees, like a little swing and a little for the kids. And it's kind of like a little rocky little slope that goes down. You can drive your four-wheeler up and over it. I hear something walking past that part right there towards us, like walking straight towards us, and I could hear it clear as day. It's something walking on 2 feet. I jump up and I run back over by the door because I wasn't expecting something to approach me, but even with a gun in my hand. And I don't know if if maybe our fighting, because we were fighting, and I had a gun in my hand, and I don't know if that kind of maybe amped him up, and that's why it knocked and approached. I don't know. I don't know why all of a sudden this whatever it was making itself more announced. But that was so I put the gun inside. I'm not trying to piss something off if that's what it was. I put the gun away because I've listened to so many stories, and I know that they probably know what guns are. So I put the gun back inside the house. I come back out, and we're standing there listening, and I don't think we heard anything after that. I think we stood out there for a little while longer, but eventually we lost interest and went back inside. So that was a very interesting thing that happened. There ain't nothing out there in the woods that's going to make that noise, a knocking sound, two knocks. That was very profound for me, that if what we're hearing might be something that that this was pretty significant to me for having this experience. Let's see. So after that, I think the next day I was like, okay, if there is something out there, maybe I'll leave it some gifts. So I over by the back of the tailings pile, I went and I left like some dried fruit, like little mango pieces, and there was some like costume jewelry I left out there. Maybe they'd think it's cool. I don't know. just little whatevers, trying to see if something would move it or take it. So I went out there the next day, went over there, I checked it out. Nothing was moved, nothing was eaten. So I'm coming back so let me describe the back of this property a little better. So it's a little flat, grassy area that's from when they built the house that they wanted to put a little grassy backyard in. And then from the grassy part, it starts sloping down into the natural trees, the natural ground. It slopes down a little bit, and it goes back for maybe 40 yards. And then at the edge here that kind of goes all along the back, it all of a sudden a very significant drop off where it's maybe 45 degrees going downhill. So it's not really so much a ledge, but it all of a sudden goes from slow slope to just goes down, and it goes down for a few hundred feet, and then it levels back out right before the road's in the pond, and there's another house down there. So I'm coming back from checking this spot. There's some rocks right on the edge where it goes from the slight slope down to where the steep slope. There's rocky outcroppings along the edge. And so I'm coming back from looking at this spot, and I'm taking a pee. I'm just out there taking a pee, and I'm looking, just kind of staring. And right at these little rocky outcropping, I'm sitting there and I'm staring, and I see something that looked, and the sun was behind it. You could see kind of like sunlight. It was something hairy. It was wide, poking up from behind the rocks. That was, I don't know, maybe a foot above the rocks. And it was about 4 feet wide. And it was kind of like at the edge of the rocks. I couldn't see on the right side of the rock. I couldn't see anything, but it was just right, almost lined up with the rocks. And it was about 4 feet above the rocks. And it slowly, and I could see that it was hair. You could see that it was, the light was coming behind it. You could almost see the skin underneath the hair. You could see where the hair met whatever flesh this was, but it was an animal. I don't know what it was. I'm thinking it was maybe a Bigfoot, but it slowly went down behind the rocks, like just very slowly. It was trying not to like be fast or move or be seen maybe, but it slowly, I didn't see a head. It looked more like I don't know if it was like a shoulder but it just slowly went down behind the rocks. And I go walk. So when I start walking over towards there, I want to go see what this was, right? So I go down, and so in the front of the rocks is maybe about 4 feet high, but it's right before the hill. So if you go on the other side of the rock where this thing was, it's about 10 feet down from the back of this rock. So I go, and I'm like trying to loop around it. I don't want to get close to the rock. I don't know what it is. So I'm going, and I try to look behind the rocks. I go back. I grab my girlfriend. I'm like, dude, I just seen something back here. I didn't, honestly, I was spooked out. I know what it was. I didn't really want to be climbing up, down this hill. And so I go back and I get her, and we go down and we look at it. And right around the back of the rock, there was nothing there by the time we got to this point. But at the base of the rock, you could see where something really heavy had stepped, like the ground was disturbed. And it was like, so whatever was coming down from behind this, that was behind the rock, had stepped up into the like pine needles and stuff. It was like the imprint was like pressed down into the ground by like probably 6 inches. And I don't know what it was, but after all these experiences, the knock, I can only make a guess here. I think what I saw was a Bigfoot. It was very alarming to see whatever this was. It was large. That was behind this rock. Yeah. So that was my experience that I had there. So I talked to my uncle who's on the property, and I asked him, hey, he was a logger, so he'd been out in the woods a lot. And I asked him, I said, have you ever had any experiences out here? Do you ever see anything? Have you ever? He said, no, that's not real. He's, oh, but our neighbor at the bottom of the hill said he's seen one before. And that was not the year that this happened at when I asked him that. That was the year before when I had asked him about Bigfoot. And he had said that the neighbor at the bottom of the hill the one down by the ponds, had seen one. And so after I had this experience, I asked him about it. I said, "Hey, I'm telling my family I'd seen some weird stuff. We heard weird knocks. I just wanted to tell them." And they were very dismissive. They, "Oh, yeah, sure." It's very dismissive. And then when I asked my uncle, I said, "Well, didn't you say the neighbor had seen one?" And he says, "What? I never said that." He flat out said he never said that. I'm like, "Why would I be asking you about the neighbor that you said saw one if you didn't tell me that?" Like, clearly, so very dismissive. And then said that, "Oh, he never said that." Well, these people live out there. My family, they live out there 24/7. They're busy doing their everyday life. They're not looking for anything. They're not listening for anything. They just go about their lives. And I think more stuff goes on in these woods than you really know about. If you're not actually actively looking or listening, I think there's a lot of things that you wouldn't notice. And I know I talked to my cousin's wife and I told her about what I had seen, because she's got two little kids. That she would be very concerned if there was some creature, which I know for a fact, whatever that was behind that rock was some kind of creature. It was hair. It moved. Like it was 100% something. It wasn't my imagination. She was very concerned when I told her about this. She was the only one that had a frightened look on her face. I don't know, maybe if she's had her own experience living there, because she's a stay-at-home mom, works from home. She's at home most of the day. My cousin goes to work every day. So I don't know, maybe she's had something happen, because she looked pretty upset when I told her about this. So my cousin Aaron, his friend Garrett, he goes hunting a lot. He does a lot of, he collects firewood and sells it. And so I was talking to him. He came over for some salmon fishing. Him and his brother came over here to Seattle, and I took them out salmon fishing out in the Sound, and we caught a bunch of salmon this year. And so I was talking to him, and, "Hey, have you ever had any experience?" Because I want to know. These people live out in the woods. I want to know, "Hey, have you seen anything weird, or what do you think?" And so he said that when he has been hunting, that he'll hear things like rock cracking, like it sounds like rocks being hit together. So that's the only weird thing that he's ever experienced. But yeah, so those are my experiences I had out there. And I didn't have a direct sighting that I could say 100% sure that it was something, but it was enough for me to say that I'm pretty sure I saw something.
Wow, Nick. And that was all within, did you say 1 month?
Yeah, so everything that happened in Montana, that was one month we were out there.
Whew. Yeah. It's, to me, it's obvious that, yeah, you guys were seeing something out there. You were experiencing something. You have everything from the 9-foot dark creature behind the tree, your girlfriend experiencing a few things, just the fact that she saw something, I think you said fluffy, that was either behind a tree or looked like a tree. Either one is reported within the community, right? Like sometimes people see what they think is a stump or a tree, and then it turns out it was a Bigfoot kind of camouflaging itself, and then it disappears. And also her experience, where I can't imagine what she went through emotionally, being out there by herself in a heightened state of emotion, and then being followed by something, and she's okay, I'm gonna take in the stand right now, my knife's out, I'm ready. My goodness. Ooh, that's some and then what you saw behind the rock, right? So
Yeah, that was for me, that actually seeing with my own two eyes something. I don't know what it was, but and this was right after I heard the two knocks right in our property right there. I think I think what I saw, like a visual, but it wasn't like it was like standing out in the open, or where I can be like, "Oh, 100% that's a Bigfoot." You know what I mean? These people have full on sightings where they can see the whole creature. This thing was hiding behind a rock, and it was being very sneaky and slowly lowered itself behind the rock to where I couldn't see it anymore. And the fact that it happened right after I heard those two knocks on the property, what am I supposed to believe? That's for me. I'm like pretty sure I've seen a Bigfoot. Like that's
also I am The way I hear this story, it sounds like, yeah, other people have had things happen on that property and they're just not talking about it. That's what it sounds
Yeah.
like to me.
Yeah.
Are you and your girlfriend still together?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Is this something you guys still talk about quite a bit, or? Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about it quite often.
My goodness. Would you ever go back to that area?
Oh, yeah. We definitely will. We're going back out there here in 2 weeks and go out there for a Thanksgiving hunting trip, and we'll probably be out there for another month.
So now that you know the potential of what you're getting back into, because now you have all this information about, okay, we saw stuff, we experienced things. How are you going to prepare for that potentially happening again?
So now my head's just on a swivel 24/7. It started with the whole bear thing, and also that growl that we heard. Looking back, that was a bear growl. Now I'm wondering what really growled at us when we were at those rocks. Was it a bear? Was it something else? I don't know. So we went back out this summer, because that was not this summer, but the summer before. So we went back out for another month this summer that we just had. And instead of staying at my cousin's house, which is closer to the ponds, we stayed up at the little cabin that's like the farthest away from the ponds. And we didn't really have anything happen there. Only one weird thing that happened, because we'd listen, and after our experiences we had head on a swivel. And so the only weird thing we had happen is she went out to use the restroom. There's no outhouse, there's no bathroom in this little cabin. Right now, there's currently an addition being put on for a bathroom. I'm going to help finish probably when I go out there in 2 weeks. But she went outside to use the restroom, and she said that when she was going to the restroom, something like ran away from the building, like ran back towards there's like a little outcrop. There's rocks everywhere, but it was towards the back of the cabin. There was this little rock outcropping that it ran over towards, and I was like, "Oh, you heard something running away?" So I went and grabbed a flashlight, and I'm shining back there, and I see Eyeshine, that bright Eyeshine, and I'm shining it there, and it was like peeking behind these rocks, and it was moving around. It's a 4,000 lumen flashlight. I mean, it seems bright, so it would turn away from the light, like it didn't like the bright light, and then it would move around. And I'm trying to see what this thing is, because I'm seeing is the Eyeshine. I'm not seeing a figure or anything. But eventually, a deer stepped out later at one point, and when I'm like, "Oh, it was just a deer," I was like, "Oh, what is that hiding behind the rocks?" It was a deer. There's people that talk about skinwalkers and all sorts of weird stuff, but you never know. But she's, "Oh, it was a skinwalker." I was like, "No, it's just a deer." But I just thought it was weird, because at first looked like it was like hiding from us and moving along the rocks, and I don't know, it was just weird. But then a deer stepped out, and I was like, "Oh, it's just a deer." I, I'm I like to look for things and hear for things, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like, "Oh, every last thing you hear or every last thing is going to be Bigfoot." It's just
Sure.
not. There's other creatures out there, and so I'm very realistic in my expectations, and I just go out with an open mind and see what I can see and take it all in. And with everything that happened to us that one summer, you can once is one thing, twice, three times. When things start adding up is when you start going, okay, maybe there's something really going on here. And yeah.
After that month, did either of you start to experience things that were out of the ordinary or unexpected, like when you went back to your home area?
No, no, I live in Linwood, Everett area. It's the city here. There's not, it's, there's no woods here. There's maybe a couple little parks around here, but no, we're in the city. When I'm here, I'm not like listening or
Sure.
focused on anything like that. I'm not expecting anything. I'm not, so here I just go about my daily life, and there's people everywhere. Even if there was any kind of phenomenon going on, I probably wouldn't even notice. It's
Gotcha.
constant spoken noise. Yeah.
You mentioned that you had been leaving gifts out. Did you mention that you were getting anything in return for those?
No. Oh, but when we were going on our walks, I forgot to mention this. When we would go on our little explorative walks to see what we could see or look for evidence, we did get these feathers. They look like hawk feathers that were left on the ground where we were walking. It's very odd because I don't ever find, I've been all over this property for years and I've never seen feathers on the ground. It's very odd because we didn't just find one. We still have them to this day here. They're on the shelf over there. We found three of them, three like hawk feathers that were, and they weren't all in one spot. It was like as we were walking farther back into this area, which I felt like at the time was maybe their little hideout that if they're traveling for I think they migrate from north to south during different times of the year, and maybe they were just traveling through this area when we were there. So as we were walking back towards their little hideout area, maybe they were leaving us gifts or something. So we were finding these feathers on the ground. It was just very odd. So we kept them. It's another reason why I tried to leave them something and see if they would take anything. I did check that little gifting spot the last summer we went, this last time we went, and one of the little costume jewelry things that I had wrapped around these branches was no longer on the branch. Like I had wrapped it around so it wouldn't just fall from wind or anything, and it was on the ground, like in the little tree. So I don't know how a bird could have came up and with it. I don't know, but it was off the tree, off this little 2 foot tall little sapling that I'd wrapped it around, and it was on the ground. I don't know. Maybe something came and checked it out, but I don't think these things are on that property. And because we didn't have any action or anything last time we went out, and really we didn't really see anything when we went out there for Thanksgiving last year. Didn't really have any experiences. Saw some weird prints in the snow, but it could have been a bear for all I know. But I think that maybe they were just traveling through the area and they were just so happened to be in the area because it was for like maybe half the time. Like all these things that happened were mainly within a 2 week span, and then things just died off. Like we'd go out sitting there and listen, we wouldn't do anything. And this all was like in a 2 week span of the month we were there. So I think maybe they were just traveling through the area and making their way. Let's see if that was during the summer and maybe they were headed up north. Maybe they liked the farther up north into Canada during the summertime, and then during the wintertime they traveled down south to avoid the cold winters up there, and they just were making their way through. Because if you look on a map, like a topography map, you can see where my family's property is, and there's BLM land behind it. It's like completely surrounded by BLM land, and you can see how the forest just goes up and up and up into Canada, this like strip of mountains. So I think they come down and they just were coming through at that time. That's what I think. I don't think they stay there 24/7. I think it was just like an off chance that I could be wrong. That was what I got out of it, that it wasn't something that's there all year round.
No, and I think you might be onto something too, because I have a sighting map on my website now where I put all the stuff that, all the things from different episodes. And one of the patterns you can see is that there's pretty much a line of sighting reports that go from the pretty much up in Banff and they just trickle down through Montana, which is really interesting. It's following those mountain ranges and then splits off and goes over to the Cascades too. But it is really interesting to think about what sort of potential migration paths there are out there and how all of that works.
Yeah, and there's a lot of deer and elk in the area. I'm just trying to think, what would they eat all year if they were there all year long? I just don't see something of that size surviving in that kind of environment. There's during the springtime, I'm sure there's lots of berries, and so they're kind of like a bear. They probably could survive. There's bears there. There's grizzlies not too far away from where we stay too, and something that size could survive. I don't see why these things couldn't either. It's just hard to imagine them if they were just eating deer or elk, or how they would survive this whole time in one spot. So that's why I really think they travel around. They don't stay in one spot because they would deplete resources. And
Absolutely. It has been, what a fascinating story. So much happened during that 1 month. And I just want to say thank you for sharing what you guys experienced, Nick. And hopefully you'll be able to keep us informed with if, when you go back in the future, if things continue to happen, we'd love to hear about it.
yeah, if anything else happens, I'll have to let you know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Nick. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I hope the listeners enjoyed my story.
Before we wrap this episode, I want to say something directly to a very specific group of listeners. If you're in the military, any branch or forces, and if you've seen something that no one can explain, or if you're a national park ranger or forestry worker who's been told to stay quiet, or if you're a pilot who's seen something strange down on the ground, or if you're with the FBI, a federal agency, or working intelligence, and you stumbled upon something you're not allowed to talk about, and if you're a firefighter, paramedic, or search and rescue responder who's heard screams or found tracks that didn't make sense, if you're in the logging industry, on a remote oil field, or a trucker with government contracts, and you've had something happen that you've never told a soul, and if you're a biologist, a wildlife specialist, or a field researcher under contract who has found evidence you're not allowed to report, if you're a pastor, a missionary, or someone on a spiritual retreat and you saw something that shook your faith, or if you work in the shadows, CIA, NSA, or anything with clearance, and you've seen what the public hasn't, then I want to talk to you. Even if it's anonymous, you can reach me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The world needs to hear what you've been forced to carry alone, and you're not alone. You've got the story. We've got the mic. See you in the woods. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all of that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.